CL 650 presents your source for leading-edge news and information on today's hottest products and services. This is Experts on Call.
And welcome to 650 Sea Isles. This is Talk About Strata, and we are in the show tonight, and I have Gord Lee and Trudy Lancelin with me in the show. My name is Tony Giventu, your host. We're going to be talking about insurance. We're talking about some of the strata basics. We're talking about Bearland stratas and what they're going through with respects to their appraisals and some of the issues they deal with. And then we're going to go into some more fun stuff and talk about what happens when things go badly. So welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Trudy, you're the Deputy Executive Director of the Insurance Brokers Association of British Columbia. What's a normal day look like for you?
Okay, the Insurance Brokers Association of BC, IBABC, provides services to brokers to meet their licensing requirements. So that is education. It's a mandatory licensing and a mandatory education regime here in BC. So we provide the education that helps them meet their licensing requirements. And that's market information and regulatory changes. And my role there is largely communications.
So, and if people are unhappy with what happened with an insurance claim or a problem, you probably get those phone calls as well.
I do. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll be sure to repeat your name and email quite a few times in the show. And Gord, what's a typical day look like for you at the brokerage?
What we do is we assist clients in placing insurance as well as the administrative insurance, so such as claims, problems that arises. So typical day you would come in and like everybody, look at the thousands of emails and start answering people questions, getting back to them, and then hopefully getting some insurance placed, and then unfortunately, as always, there's always complications with regarding claims that arises, and we try to find out what's going on, and hopefully through communication with the adjuster, the unit owner, to sort things out and get those things resolved.
What do you think is the most common complaint you get?
I would say the most common is that the repair is not going as quick as an individual thinks it should be going.
Right.
And usually there's a reason behind it. So usually we have to find out from the adjuster what's gone on, where they're at now and what's holding it up. And usually it's because it's either getting approval from the insurance company side or waiting for second bids. So there's always a bit of a delay there where people think it should maybe move faster if they hire their own contractor, like if they renovate on their own. Right. But with claims, it's a little different. There's procedures.
But usually when they've hired their own contractor, that ends up resulting in an insurance claim. So,
sometimes, unfortunately.
So that goes back full cycle. No, it's interesting, though, because people get displaced out of their homes and they want things fixed now.
Yes. Very traumatic, and I understand that. And so what we do is we really try to find out what's going on. And even, if it's going as a time frame it should, if there, in certain cases we really try to move those things along a little quicker if possible to accommodate people. Because, there's a lot of cases they may not have their own insurance where they're displaced. They're not living in hotel, motel. Right. They're living in a friend's, 2-bedroom suite and they might have a family of 5 or 6, and and it may not even be in the area where they live. So kids going to school, it's very, very, can be very traumatic and difficult for individuals.
Yeah, insurance is something that it's a purchase that's really unlike any other purchase, and it's different right from the researching point before you even buy it, and how increases are introduced, how premiums are. Premium increases, deductible increases. Quite often, consumers have some questions around that, and they come up against that difference when they are applying the same process that they use, i.e., a strata council, in buying other services and contracts, and it doesn't really work the same with insurance, and so quite often there are questions around that.
Which leads us back to the basics.
That's right.
The simple basics of strata insurance. I think it's one of the, and some of the basic skills that strata councils should use when they're dealing with insurance. Strata councils quite often will just look to their property manager to say, can you make sure our insurance is renewed for this year? Get us the best price. Can you get us more than one quote? And everyone, I get the sense with respect to most of the communities is there are a lot of assumptions made. people assume the right questions are being asked along the way. They assume that they're getting the same policy if they've got two quotes, that it's exactly the same policy with the same conditions and the same exclusions. But they're forgetting about the simple basics of what they have. So Gord, talk us through a little bit. What are the simple basics that a strata has to insure for?
They have to insure for the common property, the common assets of the strata, because under the Strata Act, they must have liability insurance in place. They must have some boiler and machinery coverage in place.
It's important to remember, just even on those things that Gord just mentioned, that your building policy is a commercial policy. It's not like, and so people who have moved into a strata coming from a homeowner environment and experience will find that now they're insuring potentially a $20 million commercial property, and it's a new ballgame in that respect.
Or, well, we have one of the CHOA Association members is over 500 units, and their appraisal value is over $100 million.
Right.
And so, you know, they are running a corporation, right?
Yes.
And people don't realize, even in a duplex, that I'm in a different category. I'm not a detached house. I'm not dealing with domestic insurance. I'm now dealing with a commercial relationship in the policy. So the rules change.
The rules change and the providers change. I think Gord would probably attest there are fewer providers of insurance for some of those larger risks like that. So going out and getting multiple quotes may not even be a worthwhile exercise when there are fewer insurers servicing that market.
Right.
And they're all taking on more risks.
Right.
So we're now playing, in a bigger league in some respects.
But that's a good point when you're talking about the number of insurers that are in the market. When you're dealing with commercial, we're dealing in a province where half of our population now is in some sort of relationship with a strata property, whether it's commercial, industrial, whether it's a hotel, retirement homes, as we've discovered in the news lately, duplexes, triplexes, bare land stratas,
mixed
townhouses, mixed use, commercial, residential, golf courses and resorts. We have riding stables and an airport. Like, we have everything that you can imagine within our land title system has the potential to be strata titled. And so we have this huge demand on the insurance industry. So are there times when it's actually tough to place the insurance for strata corporations?
Absolutely. Like, I think what's happened is that recently, actually this morning, I got in, I was reading an email, and they're saying that in, I believe it's in Calgary or in Toronto, they're having a hard time getting strata insurance. It's getting tougher and tougher because it's not just in BC, but other provinces as well. And, some provinces, their regulations on the construction is probably not as good as BC. And so what they're really saying is that they've been faced a lot of water damage claims, and there's a lot more insurers pulling out of that business because when they first get in, they get the premium, but the amount they pay out, they just lose their shirt. So it does get very difficult. And also in BC, one of the problems we have, or one of the challenges we have, is we have an earthquake risk,
right? Which
they have to buy reinsurance on and put funds aside, and that makes it very hard for a lot of insurance companies, especially if they're smaller companies. They would either not insure stratas, or they would be able to put a very little line on it just because they just don't have the capacity.
So the legislation requires full replacement value with respects to insuring the common property, common assets, and fixtures. How does a strata corporation determine what's full replacement value? What steps do they have to take to be able to establish that?
I think in industry practice, what we see is most strata corporations would get a professional appraisal to assess the building replacement, the insurance replacement. In fact, it's very specific that what is it going to cost to rebuild in event of a loss, that what does the insurance company will have to pay today. Right. And that's very important because, we do have clients that, for example, that might have built a sixplex, and they go, well, I'm the developer, I'm living in one of the units. Right. I don't need appraisal, Gord. I built it, I know what it costs. And my whole thing is, I understand, but see, what happens is that when you go through insurance claim, it's a little different than if you renovate it or you're building a house, because, there is the emergency restoration.
Right.
They have to do the due diligence and dispatch, so there's no like waiting for multiple bids, or maybe your plumber could do a little cheaper on a job if you could wait 2-3 weeks.
Debris removal.
Yeah. There's all these factors. So really, and also bylaws.
Right.
And
Right,
bylaws, yeah.
as they get older, the buildings, the bylaws change. So that appraisal is the way.
Environmental issues.
Yes.
So, so we're really left with a whole different playing field when we're talking about strata insurance when it comes to big issues. Yeah, here's a good example of something that's occurred recently, and the strata is struggling with how to fix this. New development, a high-rise building. The developer, as an incentive for purchasers, happens all the time. It's a great opportunity when people are buying. Offers the option of the standard carpeting or an upgrade to hardwood floors in the units. So these hardwood floors are installed by the owner-developer. They're part of the fixtures of the building. So how does the appraiser and the broker ensure for the fact that half of the units have hardwood floors, half of the units have carpets? And throwing a dart at a dartboard and guessing at the number isn't the way to do it. Somebody has to figure out what this is.
Yes. Now from my experience is that we don't go look at the individual building. So we usually trust the appraiser that's going in there. From my understanding, what appraiser does is that, when they do the appraisal, they would inspect the site, but they most likely would only inspect one or two of the units. It's very unlikely they're going to go through all the units. And so what happens is that I would say that they would then have to estimate on average
Right.
what the average unit is to replace, and build that into their replacement value.
Assuming they catch that.
Yeah, I think a unit owner, that would be a good piece of advice for a unit owner is to, number one, ask that question at a strata meeting of their property manager and of their broker, if they can get their broker out to a meeting and get some of those questions answered one-on-one. And then secondly, when they're purchasing their own unit insurance, it probably would only be a matter of pennies to make sure that there's something in there to cover the hardwood and the upgrades.
Some kind of backstop.
Yeah.
But they're not upgrades if the owner-developer has done them. Right? If the owner-developer does them, they're part of the original fixtures of the building.
There's policy out there that has provision of coverage for that.
Right.
That gives a little bit of margin in case, those appraisals are off. And that's where it's pretty hard on, stratas where, they appraise, but you just can't expect them to go in every unit, So you should, to have a proper policy that's customized and really built to ensure stratas. Usually have provisions for that, where it says, if this is a bit off, we'll still cover it. That's not an issue. It's
a bit of a mystery for strata owners, where the Act says that the strata corporation must ensure for full replacement value of all fixtures. And then all fixtures are basically defined under the regulations to say all those items installed by the owner-developer that are basically attached to the building that can't be removed. It's pretty daunting for a consumer to figure that out, I think.
Yeah, here again, I think that those are questions to get clarity on from the broker, either your unit broker, who would find it very beneficial to have the summary sheet, the declaration sheet for the building policy at the time that you're arranging to get your unit coverage, and as I say, get your broker out to a meeting and. Get some of those details covered off.
Yeah, and in my world dealing with consumers, I always tell everybody, get absolutely everything in writing. If it's not in writing, it's probably not true. So don't believe what someone's told you. So strata councils and property managers, can exercise the same thing. We've had a discussion with the broker, or we've had a discussion with an adjuster or an insurer. Follow that up with an email saying, I just want to confirm our discussion that these were all of the terms and conditions that you talked about. Please verify whether this is actually correct or not. Because there's a lot of misunderstandings that happen in insurance relationships with stratas. I think, Trudy, you get the calls, right?
Yeah, and I think, it's human nature for people to think that bad things only happen to other people, and that and that these things won't happen to me. However, I think we can see, especially in a strata situation, when you can't control whether your neighbor above you is overflows the tub or something like that. So it's when you're living in a much denser proximity to your neighbors, I think these things, you do have to start to think about them.
The reality of the domino effect in strata living suddenly becomes evident, doesn't it?
Right.
You're listening to QuayPacific's Talk About Strata on 650 Sea Isle. I'm Tony Giovento, your host, and we'll be back just after these messages.
This is Experts on Call on CIL 650.